Hey guys, it's Veneer, and as you may have figured, today I'm not here with an animation, but with a bit of a, I guess, story time or just, sharing something that has happened to me and my wife, of course, as well. And that is that we had to raise a baby pigeon, and that all happened between February 14th and somewhere around mid to late March. You will see the dates of the footage that I have gathered that I will show throughout the video. And basically what happened is that one of our cats brought home a pigeon, and it was surprisingly uninjured. And we guessed it was like around 2 weeks old now. We had the problem that we couldn't bring it back to its nest because it was too far up, too high up. And we actually did see the nest from our window because next to our building there is another building that's more or less empty. There's just one family living there anymore, and a whole half of that building is really completely abandoned, and there are just tons of pigeons, and there's a nest from them pretty high up there. Now the pigeon somehow seemed to have fallen out of it and still was uninjured. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, so it ended up in our home and we couldn't bring it back, and we also couldn't really bring it to anyone else because here there is no other person. And we looked online and we asked people, but there doesn't seem to be another person who takes care of cases like that. So we had to either leave it to die, I guess, or hope for it to somehow survive, which I don't think it would have happened, or we just tried to raise it ourselves. Now, we didn't have any experience in raising pigeons, so this was kind of scary for us at first, which was the reason why we at first actually thought we just put it in a box, put it to the closest place to its nest that we could find, and hope that the next day the parents would just feed it in that new nest that we made for it, basically, which was just like a small box, actually the plastic box that you saw in the footage here, and with just, a lot of paper towels. Now, we figured that probably isn't gonna happen because, first of all, maybe the parents actively threw it out because maybe it looked too weak to them or whatever, I don't know. Or they just, I don't know, wouldn't find the baby pigeon the next day, or the next day the baby pigeon would already be dead because it was February, and while it's not super cold here, it's in the night still too cold in February for a baby pigeon to survive, I'm pretty sure. So long story short, at least long story until now short, we decided to keep it and try our best to raise it, which of course wasn't that easy always because we have two cats. So we had luckily a separate room where we could just put it in so that the cats would not have access to it, and we would just raise it in there. So yeah, how did we do it? Now, disclaimer, we obviously, as I mentioned before, had no experience, and I know for a fact we did a lot of things wrong. We just did the best we could do, and it ended up working somehow. So there was a happy end to all of this, but it's not ideal, so this is not a guide on how to raise baby pigeons. So first of all, obviously we needed a nest, right? And we just took a small carton box that was, well, pretty small, but big enough to fit the baby pigeon in it, and a hot water bottle, because that one we needed too, since baby pigeons don't produce heat on their own for a couple of weeks. I honestly don't really know when we stopped using the hot water bottle. The first few days we changed it a lot, like every 2 or maybe 3 hours. So also obviously in the night, especially in the night actually. And yeah, you can figure that we probably didn't sleep that much. Anyway, that was the nest, and now we obviously also had to feed it, and that was a problem because the way we were supposed to feed it didn't really work out because the baby pigeon, and maybe I should just call it Pooper, or him or her, I actually don't know. We just usually say him or he, but we don't know if it's a boy or a girl. And anyway, we called him Cooper because it rhymes with pooper, and he pooped a lot, so he's Cooper the pooper. Anyway, so Cooper was very hyperactive. I suppose that's normal for baby pigeons. I'm not sure if he was even more hyped than other pigeons in his age or at his age. But he was super hyperactive, and we didn't quite get him to eat like you see here in this video, which is just like a random video on YouTube, which is apparently how you're supposed to feed them. And that didn't work, so all that we could do really was to try to give him frozen corn, and we just would heat it up with, well, hot water, and so it would defrost and it would get soft and all, and it would also have water in it, obviously. So that was a good thing. It was watery and it was also solid. So that seemed to work for the first few days, because that was all that we could give him for the first few days. That worked. And then we also gave him peas, which were like canned peas. So they were already boiled. They were soft. They were in water. There were also no additives. I made sure that there wasn't salt or sugar or anything like that in it. And it worked actually pretty well, as you can see from the video. So he, was going crazy on the corn. He really seemed to like corn. Next thing that was important was to massage his crop every time he ate, because otherwise he didn't really digest well enough, and apparently you're supposed to massage the crop, well, so he can digest well. Because if you don't do it and he can't digest it on his own properly, then he could just die from it, because there will be some bacteria building up and something like that, so it wouldn't be good. After a few days we started to give him a grain mix that's, made for birds. So I guess that should be fine, right? And we also tried, by the way, some oat water mixture, but it didn't really seem to work at all. So that's why we kind of stuck with things that he could pick up on his own. Also, what I forgot to mention is that throughout the day, we always put him into his nest, his box, and covered it almost completely with a towel, so that it would be dark and he would just be quiet, which was really nice, because whenever there was too much light or whenever he saw us, he would just, go nuts and scream from the top of his lungs, basically. And it's not because we fed him too little, I hope, and I actually think so, because his crop was at times so full and he pooped so much, it's almost impossible that he didn't get enough food. Anyway, moving on. After some time, he was too big for his first nest, so we put him into a shopping basket that we never used anyway. It was much wider, much bigger, much higher. In general, just, more space. Still with a hot water bottle at that point, still covered with a towel for most parts of the day. Then again, after another few days, he was starting to jump out on top of the basket. Even with the towel, he would just, rip it down and jump on top of the edge of the basket. We put him then into a cat box, so that seemed to work the best. Still with a hot water bottle, by the way. I'm not quite sure when we stopped using that. Now that I think of it, it probably has to be around 3 weeks actually after we got him. So far, so good. Okay, we were able to keep him warm, we were able to feed him, so he seemed to get enough food and all of that, and everything seemed somewhat fine. But now the biggest problem that we had is that we couldn't keep him forever. So we had to release him somehow, and the way we did this was to first familiarize him with the flock that we would bring him back to. Now we were lucky and a bit unlucky too. So we were unlucky because the flock isn't used to humans, so whenever humans come too close, they will fly off. Or if they hear any noises that they don't hear all the time, they will fly off. So we couldn't go to them. Also because they were usually on top of the building, so there's no way we could get close to them and just put Cooper close to them, and so that they can familiarize or anything like that. But what we could do was to place him onto the window ledge with the front of the cat box facing outside, so he could always see the pigeons, and I'm pretty sure the pigeons also could see him, because pigeons are pretty aware. So that actually seemed to work pretty well, because, well, again, there was a happy ending to all of this. But first, before we left him, fly off, we took him out to a empty parking lot or whatever it is, also in front of a pretty much empty building. There's a lot of empty buildings around our home, actually. And we would take him out and then just leave him be curious, give him some stuff to pick up, and also throw him into the air so he could, work out his wings a bit. We also did this at home, by the way, First, of course, just from a few centimeters above ground, we would pick him up and then, let him fly, basically. Yeah, all of that is really important so he can work out his body, use his feet, use his wings, of course, and all that stuff. And it was also pretty funny because whenever we walked too far away, he would just fly to us, as you can see in one of the clips here, probably. Yeah, so that was pretty neat. It worked out pretty well. We did this for like half an hour, almost every day, for, I don't know, a week or so. At first, also, he always wanted to get back into his cage. It was his nest. He was feeling safe there. So he wanted to be in there. At some point, he started to not want to be in his nest anymore. And that's when we took him out for the most part of the day and let him be in that room on his own. Luckily, he always wanted to be on the same spots in that room, which was the door handle and the back of one chair. So we could just put paper, beneath. And whenever he had to poop, Cooper the Pooper would poop on paper. So that was working pretty well, all things considered. He would also fly around in that room a bit, because he really didn't want to be in that nest anymore. But he also didn't quite want to go out. He also didn't have all of his feathers quite yet. So that was just a time when we took him out and for a few minutes a day, or half an hour maybe, and then took him back in and just let him sit in the room and watch his soon friends outside. And then the next step was to actually just let him on the window ledge without cage. He was looking down, was looking to the pigeons. The pigeons looked at him sometimes too, and so on. And one day when I was just going out for 1 minute or so, like out of the room, and when I came back in, he was gone. And I looked under the bed that was in that room. I looked everywhere in that room, but he was nowhere to be found. Then I looked outside to the ground, and he wasn't anywhere there too. So just then I realized he probably flew off, and when I looked to the other pigeons on the other side, I could make out our Cooper. So that was pretty funny and unexpected. We didn't really expect him to just fly off, and that was on the 14th of March, I think. So again, you see the date on screen, so you will know. And yeah, he came back after a few minutes. He just flew back to the window ledge, and we put him back in. Closed the window because, we didn't want to have it open all day when we are not there. So the next day we did the same. We opened the window. He was curious, sat a bit on the window ledge, and then flew off to the flock. And they really, also the day before, surprisingly, they just were hanging out. It seemed as they were always a flock. It didn't seem like he was a stranger to them. And which makes sense, I guess, because he initially came from that flock, but I'm not sure how much that was still worth, or if it was really just because they kept seeing him on that window ledge in that cat box. And anyway, it worked out. So after a few more days, we actually closed the door when he was outside, because we didn't want him to come back over and over again. Because for about a week or even more, he just kept flying back, even though throughout the day he would go out longer and longer, and one day even throughout the night he was gone, so he just came back the next day. But he always kept coming back to us, so we just decided to close the window when he was out, so he had to stay with the flock, because he seemed really comfortable, too comfortable with coming back to us. We were more or less his family, right? And it was kind of cute and all of that, obviously, but it was not the best for him, so we really wanted him to be with the flock. And it worked, so obviously it worked. I mean, he couldn't come back through the closed window, right? So he just stayed with the flock, and we kept seeing him until now still, which is in the mid of April. We still keep seeing him with the flock, so he's doing well. He even has a partner there, because as you may or may not know, pigeons have a partner for life. I think it's for life, right? I think it's for life, yeah. So he seems happy, he seems healthy, and that's, I guess, the end of the story. If I forgot to mention any things, you probably will have seen it just on screen with a picture or something and a caption or some side note. Yeah, as an end note, you can raise pigeons and release them even if they stay with you for a longer time. It's not like what we thought at first, that if you keep them too long, they smell like human and the others won't accept them anymore. With pigeons, it's not like that. They actually get wild really quick. So you can raise them and release them. Just make sure to feed them properly, keep them properly, just get all the information you need, and also introduce them properly to the flock. Again, we didn't do it perfectly. There was a lot of things that we probably have done wrong. You can probably just say flat out wrong, but we did our best, and we are happy that Cooper the Pooper can now poop outside with his flock. That would be it. Next video will be an animation again. Until then, thank you to everyone who's supporting me with watching videos, liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, of course, and obviously also my patrons on Patreon. You guys help me out tremendously. I cannot thank you guys enough, really. And also all the people who buy shirts and all that stuff, it helps me out really, really a lot. So yeah, with that being said, see you in my next video or with my next animation. Until then, take care, have a good day, and bye bye.